Join me as I dive deep into the question, is God really in control of everything? I'm going to explore this idea from every angle. Many of us have grown up believing that God is in control of everything that happens in our lives. It's a comforting thought, right? The idea that there's an all-powerful being who has a plan for us, who knows what's best for us, and who is working everything out for our good. But have you ever stopped to think about what that really means? The concept of God's control raises so many questions. If God is truly in control, does that mean that everything that happens is part of his plan? Does that mean that suffering, pain, and evil are all just part of the grand scheme? If so, how can we reconcile the idea of a loving God with the reality of a world that's often filled with chaos and injustice? When we take a closer look at the world around us, it's hard not to notice the contradiction between the idea of a controlling God and the existence of free will. If we have the freedom to make choices, does that mean that God isn't always in control, or does he somehow work through our choices to bring about his plan? And what about the presence of evil in the world? If God is all-powerful, why does he allow bad things to happen? These questions are at the heart of the challenge of reconciling God's control with the reality of the world we live in. It's a challenge that has puzzled theologians and philosophers for centuries. And yet, despite the difficulties, many people of faith continue to cling to the idea that God is in control, even when the evidence seems to suggest otherwise. Different religious traditions have approached the question of God's control in different ways. In Islam, for example, the concept of qadar, or predestination, is central to the faith. Muslims believe that everything that happens is part of God's plan, and that even our choices are predetermined. In Christianity, on the other hand, the concept of free will is seen as essential to the human experience. But even within these traditions, there are debates and disagreements about the nature of God's control. In Eastern religions like Buddhism and Hinduism, the concept of karma plays a significant role. The idea is that our actions have consequences and that the universe seeks balance and harmony. But does this mean that God or some higher power is in control, or is it simply a natural process? For me, the question of God's control has been a personal struggle. Growing up, I always believed that God had a plan for my life and that everything that happened was part of that plan. But as I faced challenges and tragedies, I began to wonder if that was really true. Was God really in control? Or was he just a distant observer watching as I navigated the ups and downs of life? One moment that stands out in my memory was when I lost a close friend in a senseless accident. I was devastated and I couldn't understand why God would allow such a thing to happen. But as I reflected on that experience, I began to realize that even in the midst of tragedy, there was a sense of peace and comfort that I couldn't explain. It was as if God was saying, "I'm here and I'm with you, even in the darkest moments." As I look back on that experience, I'm reminded that faith is complex and multifaceted. It's not about easy answers or simple explanations. It's about trusting in a power that's beyond our understanding, even when we can't see the road ahead. So what does it mean to say that God is in control? Perhaps it means that we trust in a higher power even when we can't understand what's happening. Perhaps it means that we believe in a plan that's bigger than our own, even if we can't see the details. Or perhaps it simply means that we choose to have faith, even in the face of uncertainty. Thanks for joining me on this journey into the question of God's control. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What do you believe about God's control and how has it affected your life? And if you're new here, consider subscribing for more videos on faith and spirituality.